You do the cost segregation, you get the bonus depreciation from year one. All of the furniture that you're buying and all of those expenses that you're putting into the house can go directly to offset your W-2. So we've seen a number of pilots here at Hawaiian take advantage of that strategy this year after hearing about it on the podcast. And it's a really great strategy.
Interest rates are super, super high. Like, what do? How do you pivot? What strategies can you partake in to actually take advantage of this high interest rate environment that may be clouding maybe your ability to buy a house or, sell and, whatever it might be, right? You want to make sure that you're taking advantage of this market.
Welcome to Passive Income Pilots, where pilots upgrade their money. This is the definitive source for personal finance and investment tactics for aviators. We interview world-renowned experts and share these lessons with the flying community. So if you're ready for practical knowledge and insights, let's roll. Hey, welcome back to Passive Income Pilots, everyone, to the 49th episode. What are we, 9-ish months into this podcast? Ryan Gibson, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited to almost be at our 50th. We actually have an amazing guest planned for our 50th episode, so we'll be releasing that one shortly. But today I really wanted to have a conversation with you, Tait, about why we started this podcast, as we round the corner on nearly 50 episodes, and what our goals are here to provide the flying community and the investing community at large.
Absolutely.
And some of the feedback we've gotten, I think we can share some of that. And then just kind of recapping some of the major themes that have come out of this podcast that I think our listeners will really appreciate.
Yeah, I'd like to go back, highlight a few of the things that we've gotten to explore on the show and point some of the newer listeners back through some older episodes where we brought on some incredible guests and give them a chance to just pull some highlights out and maybe point you in the right direction if you'd like to go back and listen to some of the older episodes, because just because they were a little bit older doesn't mean they lack any substance or value. So Ryan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, before we do that, I actually wanted to just kind of remind everybody what the philosophy of this show is all about. Tait and I have established a mission, vision, values for the podcast. And one of the things that we want to make sure the listeners know about is we're not here with a singular focus. A lot of times you talk to a financial advisor or you talk to someone who's trying to get you to sign up for their program or sell you some insurance or something like that. They have what's called a singular focus. This podcast is not intended to do that. This podcast is intended to bring the best and the brightest from the aviation community and the investing world, and sometimes both. They have both flying and investing in their background to the podcast to open up everybody's awareness of all the things that happen in the investing world so that they can make great decisions on where they decide to put their money. We're not providing any tax, legal, or investment advice on the show. However, we are trying to bring in guests that can provide a more comprehensive look at the market. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, traditional, non-traditional, alternative investing, syndications, going out and doing your own projects. We're trying to bring you all that information into one spot because that currently doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
And then most importantly, we're trying to make it actionable. We're trying to say, hey, here's the best vendor, or here's someone you can go talk to about getting this tax or legal or investment advice. And here's their opinions on a certain topic. And so we're really excited to continue building this brand and building this podcast so that all of our listeners can say, hey, I can go to Passive Income Pilots and find any part of the industry that I'm looking for in a safe environment that isn't going to be totally biased to trying to sell you a particular thing. Now, having said that, me and Tait are, raising our own money and doing our own funds and things like that. But the point of this show is to bring everybody together and have a really comprehensive look at the financial environment and to show what's out there.
Absolutely.
We are going to do a recap today of some of our big takeaways, big topics that we've talked about. So if you've just tuned in and you've never listened to an episode, this is the perfect place to start because you can kind of get a taste of everything that you've missed in the previous 50 episodes. Not that it isn't, worthwhile to go back and listen to those, but we're going to kind of give you the episode number and say, hey, this is the topic we talked about. And here's like a quick overview summary. So Tait, kick us off.
Yeah, I'm going to take us back to episode number 10 with Toby Mathis. This actually was the number one downloaded episode. If we look at our stats, that one is through the roof. Everybody is looking for ways to mitigate their taxes. And episode 10 is reduce your taxes and minimize returns using proven investment strategies with Toby Mathis. Toby gave us a 15-minute MBA course on active, passive, and portfolio income. It's just an incredible episode. I point people back to that one every time. He touches on real estate professional status and depreciation, how depreciation works in real estate. Really important if you're trying to wrap your head around real estate. You know, there's a reason why we are real estate enthusiasts. We don't want to be biased on this show. We want to provide the full landscape and let people see what all the options are and be open to every investing strategy out there. But there's a reason why Toby is a big fan of real estate as a tax strategist, as a tax attorney, and the reason why Ryan and I are such fans of real estate. So, Ryan, you want to touch on that episode? Because I know you've been working with Toby and Clint at Anderson Advisors for a long time, and not necessarily promoting them in any way. We don't necessarily promote anybody that we bring on the show, but I know you have a relationship with them, and you might have some takeaways from that show.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that every pilot out there is trying to figure out how to reduce their taxes, right, and mitigate their risk. And what a better place to talk to than an attorney that specializes in tax and legal strategy, right? And so we've had these guests on the show that can talk about how to mitigate your tax and your legal strategies, and sometimes, as pilots or as high paid professionals, there's not a lot of options to reduce your taxes. And if you started to invest, you're kind of wondering, do I need an LLC? Do I need protection against this asset if I have one rental property that I'm using as an Airbnb or renting out long term? Or what ways can a pilot, minimize or reduce their taxes? And so that episode really dives into how you can kind of change your facts to adjust your tax, right? To fix, some of your tax strategies where, you may be thinking, okay, I'm paying through the nose on my taxes. I'm making $300,000 this year for the first time ever because my contract and I'm getting a bonus and all this. What can I do to better position myself for tax strategies, right? And so that episode really dives into that. I'll take it a layer down and say that, if you do decide, hey, to go buy some real estate, there's some things you can do like depreciation, and there's a whole episode on that. Tait, what number is that?
Well, I'll mention that episode 14 was a follow-up with Toby, and we talked about cost segregation and tax savings. But then to go a layer deeper, as you're alluding to, we then did an episode with Yona Weiss, who is with Madison Speck, and that is episode. I'll get the number for you in a second. You break down that episode for us.
And that's a really good point. Episode 14 is a follow-up to some of the more granular tax strategies that we can do. So if you listen to the number 10, you're going to learn kind of a high level, and then 14 is a little bit deeper. And then what episode do you have for us on Yona?
32.
Episode 32. So that even goes a layer down. We only just glaze over depreciation. But Yona actually lays it all out and says, this is exactly how to do it. And by the way, hint, I actually use Yona for all my cost segregation studies. Or at least I did when we hired it externally. Now we do them all in-house. Long story short, but we were able to do it in-house. But I did all of them, probably over 25 cost segregation studies with Yona. And if I was going to go external again, that's the guy who I'd use. Give him a call.
If you've heard about our Reno Airbnb, he was the one that did the cost seg on that.
Yeah. So if you're wondering like, hey, I bought a bunch of rentals or I'm about to buy a bunch of rentals and I want to make sure that I'm best positioned and most tax efficient on those, that episode is going to save you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. So make sure you give episode 32 a look. The next thing I wanted to bring up is IRA investing. We've talked about this on the show. Maybe you're at a regional airline and you switch to a major and you are like, what do I do with my 401k? What do I do with my IRA? Or hey, Tait, I really want to invest in your project, but I want to do it with my retirement account. Can I? And the reality is, when you think about your Fidelity or Schwab or T. Rowe, whatever custodian is housing your airline's 401k, you can't use that to invest in anything other than stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Right? You can't take that and go buy your own rental property. You can't take your retirement account and go buy your own Airbnb. You can't take that and go invest in a syndication. You can't use it to go flip houses. However, you can use a self-directed IRA to do that. And so we decided, hey, let's record an entire episode and introduce you to somebody who, or really I should say a company, since Derek unfortunately has moved on from Quest, but there's a guy, Kirk Power, you can call now at Quest Trust Company to talk all about self-directed IRAs. We also brought on Carrie Cook, who's the CEO of Preferred Trust Company. And so we have 2 episodes that actually dive into how to do all this retirement stuff. So if you're thinking, again, hey, I want to use my retirement account to be an investor, we've got a whole show on that. And so what number is that?
So Carrie Cook, Preferred Trust Company, is episode 9, and with Derek Long at Quest is episode 36. I think the episode 36, I have to say, Derek laid down the best explanation of true self-directed IRAs I've ever heard. So episode 36, I think, is the place you want to go. There are dozens of self-directed IRA companies out there. And to be clear, in order to invest in non-public market investment opportunities through a retirement account, you have to be with a fee-based self-directed. And I know there's self-directed retirement account within Schwab. That's not a true self-directed. It's a shame that they use the same verbiage. But there are dozens of those companies. Preferred Trust and Quest are the 2 that we work with most often. So you have a chance to get to know those people right here on the show.
Okay, I'm going to call an audible and talk about all the year-end tax tips that somebody may need or may want to listen to. So every year, guys, guess what? You're going to have this tax thing and you have to have a bunch of stuff in by December 31st. So if you're thinking, okay, well, I got to remember this episode for next year, maybe copy and paste this link to re-listen at the end of the year. But we do have a end of the year tax tip episode where we literally go through all my favorite strategies on what you need to do at the end of the year to save money on taxes. So we had a complete episode on that. I'll kind of go through the highlights of that episode super fast. But number 1, how to do a Roth conversion, or I should say, Roth conversion at the end of the year. So, you may be exceeding the income limits for your retirement account contributions to a Roth, right? I think the limits are like 160 grand or something like that this year.
Yeah, it's very low.
Yeah, very low. But, so you're, so again, you're that guy making 250, 300 this year with United or Southwest or Delta or Hawaiians or Alaskans new pilot contracts. And so now you're in that higher income bracket, right? And so you're saying, hey, I need to make contributions, but I don't want to be in traditional IRA, but I want it to be a Roth, but I can't put it in the Roth. So I'm going to put it in the traditional, and then I'm going to backdoor it into a Roth. And then added on to that, there's a way to actually save or reduce the amount of money that you're taxed on with that conversion. Because remember, when you convert, you actually pay the taxes on what you convert, because a Roth, you have to pay the taxes before it goes in, right? But then it grows tax free. There's some really awesome strategies on how you can get your assets revalued and then save a ton on your taxes. So check that episode out. That episode is with who and what was the number, Tate?
That was number 44, Mastering Year-End Tax Strategies with yours truly, Tait and Ryan.
Nice. I love it. Okay. Tate, you have been on a journey. I mean, half these episodes, I feel like you're in a U-Haul truck. And it's because you dove in, you've taken massive action, and you've gone out to Reno, Nevada, and you bought an Airbnb because you wanted to pick up some huge tax savings and buy an awesome house. What's it called? It's called like the crib or something like that, right? Or the Stoke house.
The Stoke house.
I love it.
Yeah. We did buy a crib as an amenity, but I couldn't buy it on Amazon because I didn't want to mess up my algorithm and get Huggies ads for the next 6 months. So I had to go into a store and pay cash. No, I'm just kidding.
We call that a pack and play for those parents out there. We appreciate you putting that in your Airbnb take, because the pack and plays are always a pain to move around. So thanks for putting that as an amenity in your Airbnb. So
the short-term rental loophole is something that's getting a lot of attention lately, particularly on social media among the tax strategy crowd. And it's because the depreciation that you can pull out of real estate is super powerful, but most people can't use it against their W-2 income. In order to use it against your W-2 income, you have to be a real estate professional. And that's a whole thing that we dive into on multiple episodes with Toby Mathis. We dive into it as well on episode 42 with Billy Withers, who's a tax strategist. And so a real estate professional is the holy grail. If you can get that, then you can use all of your syndication losses, all of your long-term rental losses, against your W-2. But if you cannot climb that mountain, because it's a mountain, it's a quite a bit of paperwork that you need to, you have to log your hours, you have to spend a lot of time managing your own rental portfolio in order to qualify as a real estate professional. If you can't get that status, it's not the end of the world, because if you own an Airbnb and you actively manage it yourself, and as long as the average stay is less than 7 days, you can take those depreciation losses from that particular real estate asset against your active income. So we're seeing an uptick in doctors, attorneys, pilots, high-paid W-2 professionals jump into the Airbnb space because they can run a cost segregation study on the house. They can write off all the furniture that they're buying, and they can apply bonus depreciation. Last year was 80%. This year it's 60%. It's starting to phase out, but it's still a very accretive tax benefit. And by putting it into service, doesn't necessarily have to rent, but it has to be advertised. It has to be live on Airbnb prior to December 31st. And you can take all of those tax benefits from buying it. You do the cost segregation, you get the bonus depreciation from year one. All of the furniture that you're buying and all of those expenses that you're putting into the house can go directly to offset your W-2. So we've seen a number of pilots here at Hawaiian take advantage of that strategy this year after hearing about it on the podcast. And it's a really great strategy. So if you want to learn about the loophole, go to episode 42 with Billy Withers, episodes with Toby Mathis. And if you want to learn about Airbnbs themselves, we had a great episode with Dan Templin. That was episode 41, diving into sort of the nuts and bolts of how to find, renovate, and run Airbnbs.
That's great, Tait. And I also, I don't want to miss a good topic, but I mean, we've done everything on this episode from episode 2, talking about opportunity zones and DST funds and how to do 1031 exchanges, to, if you want to hire a wealth manager. In episode number 3, we talked about, wealth management strategies, how people get paid, your financial advisors. We talked about in episode 6, transitioning from active to passive investing with Jeremy Roll, who's done over 100 syndications. We talked about blockchain. We talked about, doing, investing in crypto. That was on episode 8. That was like the best explanation of crypto and blockchain that I think I've ever heard, which is super awesome. We've talked about this high interest rate environment that we're in, right? Where we're actually, interest rates are super, super high. Like, what do you do? How do you pivot? What strategies can you partake in to actually take advantage of this high interest rate environment that may be clouding maybe your ability to buy a house or sell, and whatever it might be, right? You want to make sure that you're taking advantage of this market. That was episode 11. We talked about investing in laundromats, in episode 13, super fun with our friend Sam Wilson. And
Yep.
But, I really want to talk about the storage industry, right? Because the storage industry is something that I'm super involved in. Tait, you've invested millions of dollars with your fund into self-storage. Many millions into self-storage. And, we've done things, where we kind of dive into what self-storage is all about, how we evaluate deals. We talked about how we find and locate those properties to actually build ground up. We even had a general contractor come on who built self-storage, Aaron Saunders, our president of construction, to talk about that. I believe he did that in episode...
Well, the one where we do a little bit of a deep dive into self-storage is 43. And Aaron Saunders, boy, if you want a deep dive into the construction aspect of self-storage, what episode is it with Spartan Construction Management?
27.
All right, 27 with Aaron Saunders.
So
excellent.
With that, we just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to kind of just lay the land, kind of reinvigorate the reason why we're in this podcasting space and what's to come with Passive Income Pilots. There's actually a lot of things that we're going to be doing this year.
Yeah, let's look to the future. So we've recapped, right? So what's new? Where are we going with this thing?
Yeah, before we do that too, I do want to say episode 46, oil and natural gas investing. By the way, we've scraped the surface of the earth for years, I feel like, to find somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
Well, and we're going to go deeper on that. I've actually got some guests in my pocket that are coming.
If you just want a layman's explanation of it, episode 46, Derek Long comes on from Eckerd, and he talks about, how to do oil and natural gas investing. Amazing. Like I've never heard it explained so clearly to me. And that's where I think, Tait, you talk about the future. I think what's really, for me, what I'm very passionate about on this show, especially is like simplifying this stuff. Because I don't have a big Wall Street background. I didn't have a ton of financial experience previously, as an airline pilot. And so we're trying to get the people that can help us learn all this stuff together. So Tait, why don't you talk about a little bit more about, kind of what our listeners can expect in the next 50 episodes or the next 100 episodes for that matter?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the next 50 to 100, the next years of doing this podcast with you, Ryan. We're just getting started. We're going to bring on some incredible guests. We've got a really exciting guest on episode 50 in store for you, so stay tuned for that. We're going to bring on guests that you've never heard of. We're going to talk about asset classes that you've never even thought of and investing strategies that you've never even thought of. And overall, we're going to provide the most unbiased and holistic platform for investing education for the pilot community that exists.
So thanks everybody for being loyal listeners, and we'll catch you on the next episode.